That is a significant shift over that period of time. You'll notice that the general temperature in the United States on the currency question is less than it was several years ago. Certainly it featured in the presidentials, as it's still a live factor, but it's not its screaming point, which is where it was 5 years ago. Why, therefore, would the Chinese be interested in further reform to the currency, as opposed to artificially giving yourself a price advantage on international export markets? I think the Chinese have studied these questions deeply, like those engaged in similar macroeconomic policy questions in other countries at that stage of development. And they've worked out that if the next driver of demand in the Chinese economy is domestic consumption, that in fact there is an overall, and from their perspective, counterintuitive wisdom in making imports into the economy less expensive than they currently are, as a further driver of economic activity and growth. Frankly, that's good for the rest of us. Think about it. And I think they have begun to reach these conclusions. The folk who are now emerging into significant policy advisory positions within the central bank, around Zhou Xiaochuan, and those who will replace him, given his term at the bank is coming to a close, I think all Harvard educated, they know the way these things work, they know where they're up to, and they know the next set of changes to occur. So do I expect a full float of the Chinese yuan? Nope. Do I expect what I would describe in Australia in previous decades as a dirty float, that is within a much wider band? Yes, and entirely for Chinese domestic reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Rudd. I'm really grateful to you for spending this hour and a half with a audience that you can see was very interested in hearing you and asking you questions. I want to thank each one of you, because I believe that you've had your time well spent. One of the reasons why I chose to invite Mr. Rudd to Bombay as part of our IISS series is because I have seen from his writings, which incidentally are available on the IISS website, his London lecture, his lecture in Bahrain earlier this week, and also the full version of his lecture this evening. You can go to IISS.org and read all of that. He's one of the most well-informed analysts of China. And I believe that in India, we don't pay enough attention to what is happening in China. You mentioned earlier that there are these two extreme views, either China as a friend or a foe. But between these two extreme views, a realist understanding of what's happening is extremely important. It is true that unlike France and Germany, or Britain and France, and many of the European countries which fought many wars over the last 500 years, India and China went to war only once in the last 2,500 years, and that was in 1962. But it is also true that the interaction between India and China has been minimal. And we cannot continue in this manner where the level of interaction between our two countries is as little as it actually is. Often people talk about this $60 billion business, but those numbers actually hide the fact that people-to-people interaction is still very low, and a realistic understanding of the nature of transformation in China is still something we do not, I believe, have an adequate grasp of what is happening. And I think it's very, very useful for us to listen to people like you, to read what's happening in China, because China is our neighbor and will continue to play an important role. Certainly in Asia, it's already playing an important role. Even if it doesn't overtake the United States and become #1 power in the world, which I don't see happening in my lifetime, maybe by the middle of the 21st century, but I think the linear analysis which suggests by 2020 or 2030 that would happen, I'm a skeptic of all linear analysis. I think history goes in ups and downs. We have seen a phase of very rapid rise of China. We are likely to see a phase in which I think China will have to stabilize itself politically before it rises again. But whatever happens to China, it's next door to us. And for us in India, it's extremely important that we have an informed view of our neighbor, rather than fall into these two boxes of regarding China as, you know, the old days we used to say Hindi Chini bye bye. And from there we have come to a situation today where if you watch Indian television, you'd imagine there's going to be war tomorrow. There's an exaggerated negativism in the media, which you referred to. But I think between these two extremes, we have a relationship which is mature. Often it's not recognized that one of the great successes of the current government in the last decade has been to maintain stability, both under Prime Minister Vajpayee and under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. India has actually maintained a stable relationship. Despite various incidents which could have created problems, we've had a very stable relationship. I'm grateful to you for coming and speaking to us and giving us an idea of the nature of political change underway in China. And I thank each one of you for spending this evening with us. I must add a word of thanks to Mr. IISS-Oberoi, Vikram Oberoi, and Devendra Verma and his team in Oberoi, Mumbai for having worked with us and made this evening possible. I want to thank Ambreen Khan and Associates for also getting the act together this evening, and thank each one of you for coming. Thank you.